Good evening. Welcome to Captions. This evening we have a very special segment for you as we have an opportunity to bring you both mayoral candidates who are here in the studio with us. To get our program started this evening, what we're going to ask both candidates to do is to give us a 2-minute opening remark, and to get us, get the program underway, I should introduce you. We have Dan Gura, who is the current councilman at large. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Mike.
And we have Jim Maloof with us. How are you doing this evening, Jim?
I'm very fine, very fine.
Dan, why don't you go first and just give us a short opening remark, what your campaign represents and proposes to do.
I would hope, Mike, that rather than take an entire time to talk about what we've talked about for so many weeks, I'd like to remind everyone that's listening tonight as they look at the election, both the mayor's race, the 1st District Council, all the council races, the Park District, and any other race, that they judge all of us on how well we have demonstrated in our personal and our private and in our public life our ability to provide strong leadership, to use good judgment, to have the necessary experience in the public and private sector to be effective, and that we have demonstrated in both our personal, public, and private lives that we have integrity, and we have used integrity, and we will always continue to do so. So I think that if all the voters use those 4 criteria as a start, I think whomever they vote for will represent them well.
Certainly. Mr. Maloof.
Michael, thank you. My feeling as a lifelong Peorian and devoted to this community for all these 65 years and throughout all of my activities in helping people, I guess I know that my reason now for running for mayor is more important now in helping the people of this community than anything else I have done throughout the last 40 or 45 years. My work with the children of St. Jude, my work with the youngsters at the YMCA for 12 years, my involvement with education, my involvement with the Civic Center, my involvement with the Peoria Stadium and civil service clubs throughout the last 26, 27 years, and more recently in listening to the people in the neighborhoods throughout the city of such a dire need now for a new change of direction in this community. It's not to say that the people who are currently in office have done nothing, but it's my opinion, and it's the opinion of the people of this community as I see it and hear it, is that there should be more done. And consequently, my experience factor then of working with the people of this community throughout all of these years is the one that says now that I should be the next mayor of this community. It's going to take a people action-oriented plan to make it happen. Again, mine is not an attack on my opponent. Mine is not an attack on the City Hall. Mine is an attack on the economy in this community and the so many people who need to be helped. And through that, we will talk to that.
Okay, this morning I don't know if you saw on the news, but there seems to be some speculation that the Chrysler thinking about the Morton plant's not going to happen. Some of the discussion suggested that maybe some of the administration's policies toward export-import relationships with Japan was one of Chrysler's concerns. What would you do as mayor, and what would you see as paramount in enticing major industry to relocate in our area? And is Peoria really able to support such a venture? I'd like for you to start, and we'll have 2-minute responses. Mr. Maloof.
Yes. The thrust of my campaign at this moment right now, Mike, is the fact that enticing new industries to this town is the fact that we have, as I quoted the other day, a sleeping giant in our enterprise zone, which we have only used twice now in 20 months. And other cities throughout the state, 7 other cities throughout the state, have already, in the same 20-month period, have had nearly $60 million worth of new construction, nearly 1,000 new jobs, nearly 2,000 retained jobs, and we still have doing what Mr. Dakin and Mr. Rodney Haynes calls a workable plan for our enterprise zone. So if we're going to entice industries to this town, we must be able then to have our house in order. We must have a plan that's ready to compete with these other cities. And finally, a plan, too, that that the City of Peoria can communicate and let the business people in this community know about, that we can sell. The City Hall alone should not be the only catalyst in selling Peoria.
Okay, thank you. Dan Gura.
Mike, I think that both you and your audience are aware that the enterprise zone is only one small piece of the entire puzzle. We have other parts of that puzzle. I think the fact that the Saturn potential and the Chrysler Corporation even took the effort to look, first of all, at Illinois. That's a change in some recent thinking. And secondly, to look at mid-central Illinois, and then again to look at the Peoria area, is encouraging to me. I think the perception that because of our cost of labor, the perception that the cost that we have both in employment, in insurance, as well as workman's comp, I think we are working and making strides to convince people that this area in our state is aggressively seeking new business. The city's responsibility is to see to it that you take the entire plan, the enterprise zone, the Economic Development Council, PETA, and all the various groups, and then you decide which plan is most effective for which business. And that's how you know yourself, and that's how you actually sell your community.
Mr. Maloof, could you describe for us your plans to address the reduced available resources for the city's operations?
Yes, I'd like to. Frankly, Mike, I don't have all of the absolute answers. I've only been into the mayor's race some 3 months now. But I'm a great believer in using people who have the knowledge and the experience to help with those, with that kind of input. I don't think any mayor can come in and say that he has a plan today, unless they have, that's going to answer all of those very, very difficult questions. My plan, which involves a large task force of people from every avenue of this community, labor, the ethnic groups, professionals, women, everyone, is one that says that we take professionals, CPAs, take government people, and use their knowledge to search the ways to help do this. I just find it difficult to say that a mayor has a plan today because, first of all, I understand from Mr. Dakin it'll be at least a year before those funds before our current funds run out and before we're faced with that. So we now have a year to prepare for that. And I think that the people of this community should have, the 300 plus people that I intend to use, should have some voice in helping to find the ways to find those solutions. And that's my program. It's intended for people, and obviously we have a very, very capable city manager. We have 9 capable city council people, but that's 8 rather, and 9 combination. That's a very intelligent group. But I see no reason why the people of this community cannot have a voice in helping them to make those very difficult decisions.
Okay. Dan.
Mike, as an elected representative, we always have input from people, but as you know, the buck stops here. We have begun planning for the potential loss of revenue sharing or a decrease in revenue sharing. We already accept the fact that it will continue to have a decreased assessed valuation, and we're never sure if our sales tax will remain stable or decrease. With that in mind, through the recent negotiations that took place with our employees, through executive session which we have had with the city manager, through private conversations I have had with the city manager and other council people, we have already begun to prepare for the worst case scenario. And that would be that in the fiscal year that will be approaching, we are going to have to operate on reduced revenue. A, we can either seek new revenue other than an increase in the homeowner's tax, or B, we can reduce the cost of business. We have chosen to look in both areas. I think that you will see and have begun to see a consolidation of city work staff. I think you will begin to see a serious look, to continue to take a serious look at the realignment within our particular divisions on what type of management percent do you need and what type of non-management do you need. So the city cannot wait a year, and the city cannot use just the input of the citizens. We must use the leadership that we were entrusted with and make those kind of decisions.
My second question kind of piggybacks on that. As you are aware, the President's budget proposals suggest that we may be losing UDAG dollars to the cities CDBG dollars are going to be reduced. You are aware of how those dollars have been used in the past. How would you utilize your office as mayor to advocate on behalf of this city's needs, and what is your opinion about that budget message?
I don't personally agree with the administration's devastating cut on the cities. I agree with the concern over the federal deficit. I agree with everybody sharing the cost as far as reduction. We have worked at and already worked through Bob Michael's office and some others in trying to address those concerns. Your programs, and the ones that your audience are very familiar with, would be devastated, in some cases wiped out, if the community development block grants were reduced. Our ability to attract and use businesses for development would be severely limited with the UDAG cutback. And as you know, we have a substantial share of our corporate subsidy paid for by revenue sharing. I don't believe that all three programs will be cut immediately. I think we have to plan for reductions. We have already involved many citizens in the different commissions asking us to evaluate their reaction to the cuts. I think that that will be probably, that in conjunction with our city budget, will be the single most challenging task facing the new mayor and new council, because there aren't a lot of other areas to go for help. You need to make those decisions.
Jim, would you like to respond
towards
to the
that same thing, Michael? Yes, I've already had a lengthy discussion with Bob Michael relative just to that subject. In fact, I'm appealing, as I would as mayor, but I've appealed to Bob to say, Bob, we cannot wait till a year from now, but somehow, some way, you must convey the message to the President or to the Congress that say that this is a distressed area and that there must be special considerations made for Peoria and Central Illinois, because it does affect everyone. It's already affected so many people. Again, I go back to my whole philosophy of using people. No, I don't intend to wait a year for those grants to be dwindled out or reduced out to where we have nothing left. But from the day I become mayor until the plans that I already have in motion is to, again, to ask the people from these areas to give us their input. They certainly have an idea. You have an idea. And I'm sure some of your peers have ideas where we need your input as to help us, to tell us what we may have to do if that crisis happens. And let's just don't wait till it happens, but let's talk about it. Let's prepare for it now. And let's don't wait for someone in the City Hall to make a decision and then tell us what they're going to do later, which is what recently happened with Southtown.
Now that you've hit on Southtown, why don't we go to that, because certainly many of people in our viewing audience and the people who are constituents of our agency, that's a subject that has had high priority. As mayor, what would you do to speed up the process of getting the long-awaited urban renewal or Southtown program back in motion?
Well, one of my plans, again, is to have a specific committee of some 25 or more people who come either immediately out of the Southtown area or those people who have related interests in Southtown to dwell principally on Southtown. And that, of course, is where I would be looking to the CAA and the other people in the Southtown area to say, we know, and we don't know, but we want to know what your needs are. This area has been laying dormant now for 6 years. It's had millions of dollars invested. And just this last week, a new Southtown plan was incorporated without even inquiring, for the most part, of the people within the area, as quoted by Mr. Lovelace in the newspaper, as quoted by Father Ron Livens and others, that says, why do you give us a plan and then tell us what you're going to do and then going to ask us later for your input? That's not people-oriented. I know there is some input, certainly from the heads of the different agencies and so forth, but I think it's atrocious to think that now we have another new plan that is now coming into fruition, which hardly anybody in Southtown agrees with. I think that's a reflection upon those people who prepared that, and certainly on those people who are in charge.
Dan, would you like to respond?
Happy to, Mike. As you know, urban renewal, or Southtown, which is part of that, has a history of over 20 years. The 6 years that I have been on the council, it has not moved as fast as you, your audience, or I would have liked. The fact that there is a Caterpillar training facility, there is a B'nai B'rith, there is a Heartland, there is a Landmark, there is a VA building, there are some churches. You know, things have happened. Have they happened as fast or as much as we would like? No. I think that, and I do know for a fact that within the next several weeks, hopefully, we'll be announcing a new development within Southtown. It will not be the Civic Center Plaza, which you know is a cornerstone to the bond repayment as well as to the whole development. I think that the plan that we looked at on the council recently did not address all of the concerns appropriately, and I think, as you know and others know, that's why I voiced my concern about that plan. I don't hold Michael McKnight or Jim Dakin totally responsible for it. I hold our city administration and the community. There needs to be a two-way dialogue. My plans for Southtown are to continue and improve our aggressive marketing of that plan, and we will be doing that.
I kind of want to piggyback on this a little more if I can, because I haven't had benefit to discuss the plan with anyone within the city administration nor anyone on the council.
You have or haven't?
I have not had that opportunity.
That's the point I'm making.
Dan, I hear Mr. Maloof saying that he would assure that there is dialogue from the leadership that is affected by plans in neighborhoods. If you were mayor, how would you make sure that kind of dialogue occur? Or as city councilman now, how do you make sure that occurs, either one?
We've begun it. In fact, that was my particular concern with our city management at the time, was that, and there are some concerns, Mike, as you know, because there was a part of it that was financing and a part of it that was appropriate use of the land. And some things probably needed staff and council okay before you can present, because you can't present something if you don't think you have a policy and a direction. The others were things that should never have had to have been addressed to us first. I think the fact that on the police matter, which was part of the entire plan, which we have a copy of that you're welcome to have today, I think that did have public hearing, did have a response. Some of the other aspects of the plan did have. I think, in fact, that night, an agreement was made. In fact, there is a meeting coming up, or just recently was held, where the NAACP had an opportunity to host Michael McKnight to discuss in detail the plan. That meeting had been set well in advance. There will be other meetings held specifically with the people that live in Southtown, because we need their input, their continued input. We need them to express their frustrations. We don't expect a universal applause, and I don't expect them to agree with everything the management of the city feels is important. But I think we need to communicate.
Communicate is sure what we need, sir, because if you will check the records, you will find, and again, this is not an attack on my opponent, but simply basics, in that my opponent was one of the 5 councilmen the other night who voted for the new Southtown project. Only 2 had the courage to vote against it, Clem Drees and, well, it's not a laughing matter, but Clem Drees and Kenny Shepard voted against it. Again, communication. Now we have all these grandiose ideas and plans of what we're going to do. And I guess I simply have to say, as a people person, and apparently the people who were at the city council the other night voicing the same interest that you just said, no one had contacted you. And yet they made the plans for this without contacting the leaders, at least, and some of the very interested people in Southtown. You know, it's beyond my conception as to why this has been allowed to go so long, with rodents running and weeds in lots and all this other stuff, and now we have a plan that's going to make it work after the people have suffered for so long. My friend, that is not in the best interest of the people of Southtown.
Okay, Dan, you kind of touched on it, but Jim, I'd like for you to get specifically into what I think is going to be key if we're going to talk about any real activity in Southtown, and that is the securing of a developer for the Civic Center corridor. And I'd like for both you gentlemen, if you can, to get a little bit more specific in terms of what you plan to do as mayor to secure a developer, and let's get some development activity going in Peoria. Jim, would you respond to that?
Sure. I've already talked to one of the major developers in the city who has already expressed some interest in another development outside of the city. And I asked him to reconsider a major project that could be used in Southtown after we have first consulted with the people of this area, as well as the city council and the city manager people to find out if it's, you know, if it can be done. He has an interest in it. I will be talking towards that. Now, again, this is not pie in the sky thing, because I don't want to make during a campaign make promises that I certainly can't keep. But there is an interest by this developer. My experience as a realtor and dealing with real estate developers certainly has to lend as much credence to this thing as anybody in the particular area, because I've had this experience. I was involved with placing the first major building in downtown East Peoria, and I can use that same kind of credentials and the same kind of experience to help Southtown. Now, in the limited time we have here, I could go on much more, but I know you're asking for us to cut short.
Thank you.
Mike, we have had ongoing discussions with local developers and local realtors that have sought their advice, will continue to seek their advice on what is the best way to package that particular Civic Center corridor, Civic Center Plaza. That is crucial to financing the continued land purchase and development of the other parcels. And as you know, it is a tax increment financing area. Therefore, tax abatement and some other inducements are not available, or else the entire financial package will collapse. We do have one major obstacle that every local developer, every developer from outside the community has expressed to us. And we are working today on a regular basis in discussions with Caterpillar. Their use, present and future use, of their training facility is very crucial to a developer's looking at and investing in the area. We need to have them come to us, Caterpillar, with our discussions to let us know exactly what direction they're going to take. That in turn makes that particular parcel more attractive to a developer.
What tools, and this kind of piggybacks on that, what tools would be available to either of you as mayor to help bring Caterpillar to that kind of decision? Are there some avenues that would be open to either of you as mayor in order to facilitate that process?
I don't believe any of us can, in this community, can dictate to Caterpillar what they're going to do. But as a mayor, as a private citizen, we could all go to Caterpillar and say, hey, you know, what are your plans for Peoria? Please tell us so that we can put the people of this community at ease. As a mayor, it would be one of my important functions, as I see it, to continually keep in contact with Caterpillar, with Silco, with the other major businesses in this corporations in this city, in this area, not only Peoria but the Tri-County area, because it's no longer just a Peoria problem. I would ask Caterpillar for what their 5-year plan would be for Peoria. Maybe they would answer it, maybe they wouldn't. But I'm going to continually ask, in the best interest of this community, what Caterpillar's plans are, because it's so very, very important to the people of this community and the other businesses here. There are, I don't say it's an absolute answer, but we have to show them a continued interest in behalf of the people of this community. I would not let that rest.
Dan.
Mike, Dick Niemiller has had and continues to have and will have, and as mayor I will have, direct communications with Caterpillar. Caterpillar has been very upfront with the city. They have been very open to discussions, as your question directly related to the use of that training facility. And they know that its impact on our community and its future is critical. They have never backed away from an open, honest discussion of what uses that building could serve. I think it's important that we continue that kind of communication with Caterpillar, that the mayor of Peoria be someone that feels very comfortable talking with Caterpillar, agreeing and disagreeing with Caterpillar on what the future use of that property can be.
Okay. What we'd like to do now is take a short break for some commercial messages, and we'll be right back with more on Captions.
Hello, my name is Curtis Russell, and I'm seeking employment in the carpentry field. I had just finished the pre-apprentice program where I have received training in the carpentry field. Now I'm enrolled in the regular apprentice program. I am 20 years old. In the past, I have dealt with landscaping and construction. I have some knowledge in blueprint reading and three-dimensional drawing. You can contact me by calling 671-3966. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Raymond Barnett. I am looking for employment to the carpentry field. I just finished a pre-apprenticeship training program, but now I'm entering into the carpenter's training apprenticeship program. I am looking for work in the builders trade, building repair and upkeep, and building maintenance. I am 22 years old, free of traveling, to be away from Peoria for an extended period of time. I think that my training is well qualified for me to do a good job in the carpenter trade area. I could be contact Raymond Barnett at 671-3966. Thank you for considering me as your employer.
Wait, Dr. Sims, I know you're new in Peoria, but I have to hurry up and get home to watch Captions.
Right, what's Captions?
Captions is a TV show that's produced by Michael Banks, and it tells us about our community. It tells us about things that happen in our community sometime before they even happen. And it comes on every Wednesday night, GE Cable Channel 5 at 7. And I never miss it.
Okay, why don't we reschedule you so I can go home and watch Captions?
That'll work.
Welcome back to Captions. My name is Joann Knight, and I will be continuing the discussion with mayoral candidates for the upcoming election, April 2nd, and this second half hour of Captions. We'd like to thank both of our participants for being with us, and we'll try and pick up where the discussion left off and talk about intergovernmental relationships. I'd like to know how each of you would promote more effective intergovernmental relationships among elected decision-making bodies.
Joann, I happen to serve at this time on the City-County Landfill Committee, and I think the county board members that are on that, as well as the other city council member that's on there with me, would probably have to say that that may be the best example of city-county relationship between the two bodies that we've ever experienced. And I think that was a great start toward encouraging and expanding the contact between the county board and the city government. I have been active on advisory capacity with District 150, active within some of our private schools. I think our relationship with the Park District is even stronger today than it was in the past, and I think it has always been strong. I think our communications now between Dick Newmiller and Springfield and between Dick Newmiller and Washington, D.C. are very strong. I would hope to build on the strengths we have, to look at what may be weaknesses and correct them, and continue the strides we have made to make sure that every elected representative, every body that's involved, knows what the other body is trying to accomplish.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gura. Mr. Maloof.
I've said since the first day of my candidacy, Joann, that because of the critical situation that our economy is in this area, that for so many years our county board and our Peoria city people have not really communicated well. Each wanted to sort of control their own little political domain, etc. But I think there has come a time now in the history of this city when that attitude has to change. It has begun to change. I see us, as we talk about lesser dollars coming in through government subsidies and so forth, that we have to look towards consolidation of certain offices so that we can save money and to use those money where the higher priorities are in order to take care of the needs of the people of this community. Intergovernmental body, I'm Prescott Bloom, Senator Prescott Bloom and Fred Turk are both actively in support of my candidacy for the mayor of the city. Apparently they feel that I have the kind of a people communication thing that will only strengthen, hopefully, our communication between Peoria and Springfield. I've had a long chat with Bob Michael, as I said earlier in the program. As a part of my people-oriented task force, not only will the mayor be involved with talking with Springfield and Washington, but concerned people in this community who have the ties to hopefully make more things happen. Wonderful things have been done, But I'm convinced, and the people are convinced, that there are more that can be done, and we're going to be working towards that.
Thank you, Mr. Maloof. As a follow-up to that question, economic development and the need to create jobs in this community has certainly become a very, very high priority in recent months and over the last couple of years or so. State of Illinois has placed a lot of emphasis on economic development activities. The City of Peoria, I think, took the lead in this area, and now the county has developed an economic development policy. In terms of intergovernmental relationships and strengthening coordination between those bodies, how do you feel the county and the city can work together to more effectively implement economic development programs and create jobs in this community?
Well, my number one thrust at this time in the campaign is that, and after having been in it a few short weeks that I have, is I have found out very precisely that our enterprise zone has not been used nowhere near what other cities in this state have already used theirs. We now have our second project in our enterprise zone. And as I said earlier in the program, that 7 other cities in the state have already had over $60 million worth of new construction, which is jobs, 1,000 new jobs, 2,000 retained jobs. The city of Aurora, in their 2.5 years that they've had their EDC, and again, I am not attacking, we need our EDC, and they're doing a marvelous job of getting started. But the city of Aurora has outdistanced us so far, it's unbelievable. They have had 15 new businesses through the work of their EDC. They've retained 10 businesses that were going to leave. They have leased out over 750,000 square feet of industrial space. They have accounted for over 1,000 new jobs. And this is the kind of a thing where I believe, again, my people input, my task force oriented program of getting people involved is the kind of a thing that will continue to focus directly on that. Not just leaving it simply in the hands of the city council and the city hall and those people who are affiliated with the EDC and the chamber. We have talent and resources in this community, abundant, and I don't believe we have used them effectively, and I am going to use them.
Thank you, Mr. Maloof. Mr. Gura?
Joann, to answer your question as it was asked, I think the example that the city set in using a Urban Development Action Grant, UDAG, to assist Keystone, which is obviously not within our corporate limits, was an excellent example of what can be done to cooperate with another municipality and businesses that live and work outside our corporate limits. That type of work, effort, has to continue. It will continue. I think, like any question that is very complex, you have to understand there are several pieces to the puzzle of job development. Yes, the enterprise zone is one. Economic Development Council is another. Peoria Economic Development Association is another. The Chamber of Commerce is another. The city's Community Development Department is another. And all of them. And when you compare all of them, from our efforts as well as the Convention and Visitors Bureau, which is actually part of creating jobs, when you put all of those together, I think you'll find our record is one that none of us are ever satisfied with the present. We always strive to improve. But I think you'll find that our record of working with the entire mid-central Illinois region and working to better the job environment climate within our community is something that we can take pride in as a start, as the foundation, and then also accept the challenge that we must move ahead at a faster pace.
Thank you. Does the annexation of Medina Township at one time received a great deal of discussion, and I'm not sure where that stands at this point, but does annexation of additional areas serve to strengthen the tax base of the Peoria community, and is that something that you would support?
Joann, yes, when you annex new property to a city, it does increase the assessed valuation of that community. On the other side of the ledger, it also takes away from the municipality that had it originally. So you have to always use the judgment on what is the best for the people that have elected you to be their representative. We did look at annexation recently and did annex Jumer's Hotel. That property around there generated a great deal of hotel, restaurant, amusement tax, sales taxes, property assessed taxes, the entire gamut of tax income to the city. The increase to the city far outweighed the cost involved. On your question that dealt with the Medina Township, that issue just not too long ago was incorporated into the plans of the Peoria Park District. They took a leadership role in assistance with the city. I believe at this time we can all probably safely assume that the property under question in Medina Township will not be, at this time, purchased by or considered to be annexed to the City of Peoria. It was a plan that apparently was not going to work. Those resources now have been targeted for other areas that both the Park District and the city can take advantage of.
Okay. Mr. Maloof, do you have a comment?
Obviously, it would be well to have those areas for the real estate tax base and the monies that they would generate for tax through those taxes. However, you're doing that at the sacrifice of those people who have spent their entire lives developing their areas and their neighborhoods as they have done in West Peoria. If they want to annex, then I see it as a wonderful opportunity for us to accept them. But to do it against their best wishes, I don't think is in the best interest of the entire community. There is an area out on North University near Pioneer Park, which is an industrial area, that I think those people out there really owe it to the city to annex to the city because of all of the services we provide for them. But to forcefully go in and annex someone is against what I would call my best judgment. I don't believe that we have used adequately the properties or the enterprise zone and the other things that we have available to us. We have not adequately used them to their fullest advantage, and so then why should we go out and take advantage of people in the outlying areas? I say use the resources you have first. Develop those strengths, and then when there is no return, and then let those people in those other outlying areas make that decision. I am not in favor of annexing people who would be opposed to coming into this city.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Maloof. Continuing with discussion of the need to strengthen our economy, the need to create additional jobs. Youth have been historically underrepresented in the labor force. Minority youth in particular have experienced exceptionally high rates of unemployment. I'm wondering what each of you gentlemen see as feasible programs to be implemented and developed. What ways will you utilize JTPA and the Private Industry Council to begin to stimulate some job opportunities for our area youth?
Me? There's this saying that the future is now upon us. And if we're not careful, the future is going to be a lot farther down the road unless we do something about it. And our future lies in our young people. The young talent today that is leaving this community, graduating from our university and our colleges and leaving here because there isn't enough opportunity. It goes right back to the job development thing that we've enjoyed for so many years in this community. Unless we continue to put all of our talents and all of our focusing into job development and businesses, we're going to continue to lose those young people. And I think that's atrocious. Again, the reason I'm running for mayor, one of my prime reasons is that we have not adequately used those resources. I have spent my entire life working with young people. I have a devoted interest in the young people of this community, and to see them come to me now with no hope for new jobs or new opportunities is something that we just cannot afford to let happen. Perhaps some things have been done, as I have said earlier, but not enough. And it's my intention, again, using the people of this community. You're going to hear me say this for the next 3 weeks. We are going to use the people of this community for their input to the service clubs and whomever to find out what we can do to adequately provide opportunities for the young people. I don't think any one person can give it to you. The 300 people I hope to put together as a task force will, good Lord willing, find a way to get that done.
Thank you, Mr. Maloof. Mr. Gura?
Joann, your question dealt primarily with, I believe, probably non-college educated youth that are having a difficulty within our community. And you also indicated some programs available through the Private Industry Council. And I think it's important to point out that I work very closely with the Private Industry Council of Greater Peoria, as well as the United Private Industry Council on the other side of the river. we have worked very hard at trying to target and allocate their dollars. You also know that the CAP agency and the Urban League have worked extensively in trying to develop programs, particularly summer programs, when there are other opportunities available. I don't think we've gone far enough. I believe that the use of those federal programs, the continued use of community development block grants and programs like that need to continue. I think it's also fair to state, Joann, that the possibility of us having corporate dollars to use for those types of programs are highly unlikely. I think we need, as Michael asked earlier in the program, we need to make sure that we have a voice in the policy making when they talk about across-the-board cuts of those programs. And there'll be give and take. And I, for one, think some of the give will have to deal with those programs that work primarily with unemployed minority youth who need to develop the kinds of skills, the hope, the opportunity to keep them in our community, but more importantly, to make them productive within our community.
Okay, thank you very much. Minority participation in terms of the city's workforce, black representation in the police and fire departments is substantially under par by some assessments. I think women in management positions in the city right now total about 3. And I'm not sure how many available management positions there are with the city. What will each of you do in conjunction with the city manager to try and strengthen the number of women, the number of blacks and other minorities in city government?
Dan, I'll let you answer that.
Well, that's fine. Be happy to. I didn't know who was first this time, Joann. Okay. You are probably, again, and most of your audience hopefully might be aware that the minority employment of the city, not counting police and fire, which I think dovetails a question you may be asking soon, is 22%, which is a goal that we have been working at. I think in the last 6 years that I have been in the council, we have made tremendous progress in employing both females and blacks, men and women. That's not to say we've reached the status quo, the satisfactory level, and now we just sit back. The area that you may ask later or that we can talk about now, within the police and fire department, when you add those employees to our total workforce number, our total minority employment drops to 15%. And as you know, again, those are substantial numbers as far as police and fire. We have made progress, primarily within the fire department, in hiring minorities, and I believe have hired our first 2 females. One, I believe, was a black woman who just recently went through probation and now is on the fire department. Am I satisfied with our progress? No, I'm not. Am I satisfied with the fact that we have come a long way the 6 years I've been in the council? Yes. But I am firmly convinced that as the mayor in a leadership position, as the council in leadership positions, we need to make sure that the equal opportunity officer and the city manager are well aware of our policy and the direction in which we intend to go as far as increasing participation for females and other minorities within our workforce.
Thank you. Mr. Maloof.
And we go right back to what I am speaking to, Joann, and that is who makes those decisions? 9 people in City Hall? Or shouldn't the people of this community have a larger, stronger voice and at least offering some suggestions, some more guidelines? I'm not saying that the people in the City Hall or the council people now are inadequate, but I don't believe, from what I have heard from the firemen, from the police department, and certainly talking to what you have speaking to what you have just asked about the minority situation, there's a horrible, I'm going to use the word horrible, but there's certainly a terrible, the word is, people are unhappy out there. The minorities are unhappy because they don't feel that they have been equally and fairly treated. I don't really know that to be an absolute truth. But I do hear from the fire people. I have heard that from the policemen. I've heard that from some of the black community. And again, if my task force of the 300 people in this community comes together with an equal and a fair representation of the black people involved with all of the committees that I have structured, believe me, the black people in this community will be heard from and they will be listened to. And then within reason, good Lord willing, everything, not everything, but hopefully we can reach a situation where the black people are happy with the opportunity that's been afforded them. They must have equal opportunity. I'm a strong advocate of that because I have employed black people all of the years I've been in business in this community. And I'm a very, very strong advocate of that.
Thank you, Mr. Maloof. I would really love to explore that further, but time is running short, and we got some questions from some residents of Southtown. And if we don't at least address the Southtown issue, I think we won't be able to survive on this square block. One of the questions that was submitted to us by a Southtown resident is, why did the city enlarge the area of Southtown? Apparently there was a change in the boundaries, at least from this gentleman's perception.
I'm not sure unless it was enlarged to incorporate it into the enterprise zone. That's one question I don't have the answer to.
Dan, can you speak to that?
I wish the individual that asked the question was here because we could probably debate the interpretation. Southtown was not enlarged. There was some discussion on the council floor. The original plan for Southtown that dates many, many years ago included target areas 1, 2, 3, and 4. There were some concerns on how we were going to do the purchase of property. And in one of the areas, there were some properties purchased because of some very dire circumstances when the residents asked for some assistance in allowing those people to be moved ahead of schedule. So the plan was not enlarged, but the targeted areas for purchase was altered slightly. We felt it was important at the time to alter the plan to allow them to be relocated, but it did not change the entire plan or scope of Southtown. In hindsight, should we have turned our back on those people and said, you're not in target area 2, we will not address your dire condition? We thought at the time we responded to the requests from the Southtown residents. Today, when those requests are not in front of us, some people assume that we may have changed our entire plan. We have not.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up question, the gentleman's second question is, why is the city reluctant to name the city employees that were moved from the Southtown area prior to the hardships? There are no past or current employees currently living in Southtown waiting for relocation.
Would you repeat the question, please, again?
As the question is that the assumption is being made, I guess, that the city, that some city employees were moved from Southtown prior to the hardships. The question is, why is the city reluctant to name those city employees?
I have no idea. I
Joann,
didn't know it was a problem.
Joann, and some people may not be aware, when we look at a package that comes to the council on a regular basis on the dollars that will be used for relocation, we are dealing with parcel number. I do not know the name of any one family or person who was relocated. I do not know how much they received for their relocation benefits and or purchase of their property. If that individual feels that the city deliberately gave an advantage and moved a city employee sooner than that person would have normally been moved, then that's a serious charge. And I think that Michael McKnight will respond to that charge, and I would be happy if that person would like to reach me at home or at the office and give me the information that that person has. I will ask Michael McKnight to make an answer.
Okay, thank you very much. One final question that was raised by some of our young people, and that is as it relates to the increase in gang activities. And the question is, what are your feelings on gang activities in the Peoria area? What solutions would you institute?
Well, I go back to my lifelong experience of dealing with young people throughout my entire life. Honestly, I've asked myself that question so many times with the problems that we recently had down in the Harrison Homes area and so forth. Then in all truth and honesty, I think as a mayor, I would be down there with our chief of police and those representatives of the Boys Club and any others in addressing those young people. I know it would be difficult, and I know it may sound like it's not exactly patriotic or whatever, but I have such a concern for young people. I would want to be upon that scene to ask them what their problems were. And then, again, communication again being the thing, along with others in this community, to find out what it would take to resolve those problems and to work actively towards that. I just, it's not an easy problem, but it's one that I think a mayor should firsthand tackle, because if he's interested in the people, I think he ought to be there. I will be there.
Thank you, Mr. Malone. Mr. Gura.
Joann, we have had several discussions, and I think many people in the community are already aware of the frustrations that led to gang-related activities. And those frustrations of unemployment, apparently no bright future, both for themselves and their friends, lead to a lot of different types of activities. We have had discussions with Richard Jones from the Boys Club, with some residents of Harrison Homes, with those people in our community who are actively working with Harrison Homes. I've had lengthy discussions with a member of the Park District, Adrian Henton, who is vitally concerned with activities. We have discussed and will be discussing with the school board and the park board. This is the kind of example of a joint venture. The dollars from city government, if there were dollars available, will not solve all the problems. But the city council, in conjunction with the park board, and a school board, and a boys club, and the tenant councils, and the PHA, and interested community people, can make inroads and to provide the kind of outlet in activities that will provide for young people. And we're not talking about 8, 9, and 10, and 12. We're talking about some young men and women, ages through teenagers on up into their early and mid-20s. The activities that each one needs are vitally different from what someone else needs. But we will and have been working at trying to find a solution that will provide them an outlet so that they're not going to have to get involved in some gang-related activities.
Thank you, Mr. Gura. I think we've got time for one other question, and then we'll give you each an opportunity for a 3-minute close. Plans for minority participation in city business contracts.
Oh, one of my plans again. See, I'm divulging all my plans here this evening. One of my plans is a small businessmen's group. The small business people of not only this community but across the nation provide about 80% of the jobs. From what we have heard and from what we have seen, especially in this community, small business people have literally been harassed by zoning problems and so forth that in any way at all might have caused them a loss of any kind of money or business is just unreal at this time when the economy is so desperate. If ever was a time when we needed to help the small businessmen, this is the time. And if we have enough small business people successfully operating their business at a profit, obviously the opportunity for minorities then being employed are much greater. And so, again, as a part of my plan will be a small businessmen's group that will have a voice in our overall task program, and we will hear from them on a continuing basis as to what their needs are, and not wait until a problem surfaces and then direct them that something can or can't be done. That's not the way a people's program works.
Thank you, Mr. Maloof. Mr. Gura.
Your question dealing with the minority businesses, the small businesses, and I think really all minority businesses, we prefer not to reinvent the wheel but to improve the wheel. We have task force available that are working actively in the community and have for some time. One of the avenues, the Peoria Economic Development Association, called PETA, has been in existence. Has it been as successful as you or I or the audience might like? No, it hasn't. But I think the framework is there. And that particular framework, which was financed primarily through city allocation of dollars, deals with small minority businesses. That's the obvious area to begin with. I think we can take more use of that. I think we can expand its programs. I think we can take wider use of the Chamber of Commerce. I think we can tap the already existing task force that are working today as small business task force to bring their ideas up to the forefront. I think that it's important, as we look at contracts that the city deals with, that we continue to look at involving minority businesses within them as we seek bids and as we allocate construction dollars through the city government.
Thank you, Mr. Gura. We've got time now for a 3-minute close from each of you. Mr. Maloof.
Well, thank you, Joann. You know, it kind of gets to me at times to think that we have all of these wonderful vehicles in place, and yet we're in such a horrible economic situation. And again, that's not to put the finger entirely on my opponent as in this race for mayor, but it's to put our finger, as I said to you earlier, is that I'm attacking the situation in Peoria. Why hasn't more been done if we have all of these vehicles and these tools? And now it appears, as we've reached sort of the bottom of our economic distress situation, now we're creating a new kind of a spirit that's going to do it. I can't believe that we have let people suffer for so long as a part of the administration to let this happen. Now, that's not to say that they would have had all of the answers several months or several years ago, but at least other cities attacked this problem years ago. Cities within our own state have done it. And and they use what I term, again, the task force concept of people becoming involved. Whether they have all of the answers or not, I don't know. We're just starting late. Too late that I don't think we can afford today to continue to do businesses that we've been doing it for the last 3 or 4 years, the business as usual concept. There's a status quo element in this community that really doesn't perceive this problem as the minority people in this community see it, as those people who are out of work and who have lost their businesses and out of jobs see it. They just don't perceive it as that. And something has to be done to change that. It is time. It is time for a new beginning. It is time for a new direction in this community. I hope to use the talents of my opponent as he sits on the city council for the next 2 years, and the other new people who come there. What we need now is a mayor. We need a mayor who can energize the people, who has a compassion and an interest in the entire community, and not waiting for other things to seriously happen before we do something about it. I promise, as your mayor, that I will get these things done.
Thank you, Mr. Maloof. Mr. Gura.
Joann, I want to thank you and Mike and the agency for providing us this forum, and thank those in the audience that took the time to listen. I also feel that the upcoming election is crucial to the direction the city takes. It's important that we select leaders that deal in facts, not fluff, that deal in ideas and not promises, that have committed for several years their involvement in neighborhoods, job development, fair taxation, leadership, not something that is talked about on a recent nature. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make in city government is when the time comes that we think the 9 of us on the city council have all the answers, or that we were ordained to be perfect. We certainly do not have perfection. We certainly do not have all the answers. Our city council has been and will continue to be in the future, and as our mayor will continue aggressively to seek out input from all aspects of our community, to pledge that we will work together with all parts of the community. And the important part, as you decipher between fact and fiction, and between facts and fluff, is to look at the candidate that has done that, who has demonstrated to the public, to the community, that his awareness of the problems is not recent, his search for answers is not recent, his pledge to continue to improve our community is important. Only together, all of us, regardless of management or labor, regardless of race, color, or creed, regardless of where we live, only together can all of us see to it that we have a better place to not only live and work, but more importantly, to raise our families. I pledge to continue to do that as our new mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gura. I know both of you gentlemen have other engagements that you need to get to. And without any further delay, we're just going to remind our audience that April 2nd is the date of the general election. You have the very important responsibility of determining who the leadership for the City of Peoria will be over the coming years. We invite you to get out April 2nd and cast your vote based upon your convictions. This has been Joann Knight for Mike Banks with the second half of Captions. Thank you and good evening.